Ever feel like no matter how hard you try, life always seems to be a hot mess? In fact, the harder you try to hide it or fix it, the worse it actually gets? If so, you've totally come to the right place. My name is Maria, radical self-love leader, storyteller, and recovering people pleaser, and you are listening to the Femme Cast podcast. The podcast for women who are truly ready to drop the paralyzing perfectionism and self-doubt and just live their best damn life, all while mastering the art of radical self-love and acceptance. Even if life is a bit of a hot mess right now. Because as I always love to say, life is always better when it's messy. This podcast is listener discretion advised for mature content and coarse language. Hey you guys, what is up? And welcome back to another episode of the Femme Cast. I am so excited and so grateful that you're here. I am throwing the notebook out the window today. I have no plan. I have no bullet points. I have zero direction of where I want to go today other than an intention to kind of wrap up these last few weeks and some of the lessons learned and the aha moments that I had from them, because it has been a very intense few weeks, and that is putting it mildly. That is the PG way of describing these last few weeks. I actually have some choice words to describe these last few weeks, but I will save that for the meat of the podcast. So, for those of you tuning in, just know that I am recording this episode on the tail end of eclipse season in November 2022. We just had the full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus, and it has been, again, an intense and trying time. All of my worst fears, limiting beliefs, patterns, behaviors have been triggered and shown to me in these last couple of weeks. A lot of them revolving around my patterns around people pleasing and just doubting my own enough-ness, have really been revealed to me. And it's really shown me, what a high I get when I feel like I am pleasing the world around me, and how that can sometimes, how I can sometimes misuse that information to steer the direction of my life. But also on the flip side, how awful it feels when I feel like I'm failing, I'm letting people down, what I'm doing isn't good enough. It is literally the lowest of the lowest feelings. And what it feels like to me is no different than having an addiction to any other drug. You get a high when you're on it, and you just crash when you're not. And that is literally how my people-pleasing tendencies have been shown to me in the last few weeks. And the realizations and the aha moments around that have just been like next level. So if you're someone who in the last few weeks has been shown some patterns, some beliefs, some shadow aspects of yourself that, need to be transformed, or if you resonate with being a people pleaser and you resonate with that idea of how good it feels when you are actually pleasing people around you, and how devastating it feels when you're not, I totally get you. And you're going to want to listen to this episode. So we are going to dive right in. I'm going to share with you some of my biggest takeaways and aha moments over the last few weeks. But before we do, I have a little something for you. It's a thing. It's a helpful thing. It'll probably help you through this period. I know it helped me. It's totally free, and here's how you can get access to it. Honestly, trying to hide the hot mess never really works. All it does is create a mountain of anxiety, stress, and self-doubt, and inevitably, more hot mess. And I should know, because I'm an expert of hot messes. That's why I created the Best Hot Mess Life Practice, a meditation and daily planner to start living your best hot mess life today. This practice will help you to put your anxiety and self-doubt at ease, instantly feel better and have more confidence, get crystal clear clarity on the actions you need to take to create massive change, and cultivate the motivation and determination to take those actions. Also, that you can finally start living your best life, even if it is a bit of a hot mess right now. So if you're even the least bit curious, go to thefemcoach.com right now for details. Wow, you guys, I don't even know what to say. Usually when I sit down to record these episodes, I have not a script, but very much a plan of what it is that I want to talk about and the kind of the points that I want to bring home and really leave with you, and highlight. And today I literally have no effing plan. Like, it is just, wow. The last 2 weeks have been such a crazy whirlwind. And I'll be quite honest, not in a good way. There's been a lot of triggers. There's been a lot of struggle. There's been a lot of challenges. And it's kind of really shown me a lot of the shadow side of, some of my worst fears and limiting beliefs and even patterns. And I'm feels like I'm coming out of it. I don't know. I'm literally recording this after, the full moon eclipse in Taurus, which many of you know, I'm a Taurus. So I felt the last 2 weeks very intensely, and that is putting it mildly. Literally every area of my life was activated, with my worst fears, worst limiting beliefs, worst, most intense insecurities and self-doubts. Like, it was just a hot mess of people pleasing and insecurity and codependency and just that. It was very uncomfortable, to say the least. And there were so many things that were kind of feeding this narrative of, I'm not enough. I need to people please in order to do well, to be successful, and to have good, healthy relationships, which is such bullshit. But this is kind of what the mind tells us, especially, if you've grown up a people pleaser, you're hardwired to believe that people pleasing is I hate to say this is the word that's popping into my mind right now, but it's so horrible. It's literally like your salvation. Like, if I could just please everyone, everything will be fine. If I could just please my coworkers, my bosses, my family, my friends, my partners, my lovers, my whatever, like, everything will be just fine. Right. And the reality is that nothing could be farther from the truth. And even more than the hot mess of having this experience, it's the hot mess of how I pieced it all together. Because I was literally, oh my God, you guys don't hold this against me. This is a guilty pleasure. So I was a huge fan of Laguna Beach and the hills and the city, way back in the day of MTV reality TV. And I've recently found myself rewatching episodes as a way to kind of escape. Right? So me being the emotional escape artist, what do I do when things get really intense other than find an out to say, fuck it, I am not doing this today. No, not today. We are not doing this. So I escaped into some old episodes of Laguna Beach. And then I recently, I'd been following it for a while, but I hadn't actually listened to an episode, was Back to the Beach, the podcast with Kristen Cavallari and Stephen Coletti, where they kind of go back. I sound like such a geek fan right now. Oh my God. But anyway, where they go back and kind of, they rewatch the episodes and they kind of talk about what was happening behind the scenes. And the reality is that it was all so fake. Like, it was all so produced, and you didn't know that because, when you're watching it, it just looks like this raw footage of a bunch of kids, living out their best drama-filled life, right? And capturing it all on camera. That's what we see. What we don't see is how, MTV was kind of right in there and instigating with a lot of prompts and a lot of questions and poking, right? And asking the questions and then getting the answer that they were hoping for and then making that the plot, like, and making it seem like it naturally happened or organically on its own, which is farthest from the truth. And then going back, even after the season was filmed, to fill it with fake lines, fake scenes, fake things to kind of tie their story of what they wanted together, right? And make it a cohesive storyline. Then it was all bullshit. And the realization that I had while I was escaping into Back to the Beach and watching reruns of Laguna There may have been pizza and ice cream involved. I don't know. We'll leave that aside for now. But as I was in there in escape mode, what I realized is that, the last few weeks have felt a lot like that, where shit happened. It was so unexplainable. It was so out of left field. And these were real events. Like, these weren't fake. Like, they were actual events that got triggered, that happened, that triggered this belief or that fear or this self-worth issue. And they were literally all like cascading all around me, all feeding this narrative of how not enough I felt. It was literally a hot mess of not enoughness. That's what I think I will call this episode, or a hot mess of people pleasing, one or the other. Because what I noticed in this experience, having moved through these last few weeks, and I think this, eclipses and full moons always tend to do, they tend to show us our shadow side, the things that we're not seeing, the patterns and the beliefs that, we really do need to let go of. And if the last few weeks showed me anything, is the lengths that I will go to please people. And it does become almost like an addiction, because nothing feels better. If you're a people pleaser, and you'll relate to this, nothing gives you a greater high than knowing that everyone in your life is pleased and happy and singing your praises and, rewarding you and patting you on the back and appreciating your hard work and appreciating all you do. Like, it is such a drug. Like, it is the biggest high. And in contrast to that, when that goes away, or God forbid, you feel like you failed someone, you feel like you've let someone down, you feel like you dropped the ball on something, you feel like you effed up. That is the worst feeling. It is literally a doomsday feeling. I can't explain it. People are like, why are you so hard on yourself? Like, why do you even put so much importance on what you do? Like, it's a little bit narcissistic. But it really comes from a place of, oh my God, if I don't please people, I will die. I will be abandoned and left to my own defenses, and I eventually will die alone. That is the people pleasing mentality in its most archaic and primal form, right? Because I do believe that this is very ancestral. I don't believe that, like, yes, my family, all of us are pretty much, people pleasers and codependents, and we have been for generations. And I've kind of looked at, some of the patterns in all of the, in all of my ancestry to kind of see what I'm like, okay, this isn't the first time we've been around this merry-go-round, right? And I could almost bet that this is very, very, very ancestral, and probably dates back for generations, even beyond anything that I can reconcile. Because I do believe that, for many of us, there were probably generations where if we didn't, especially as women, if you think about this for a second, right? Think about this. As women, there were centuries, where if we weren't chosen, i.e. by a suitor, we didn't come from a wealthy family, right? We would literally, like, our only options in life were school teacher and hooker to survive, or seamstress, right? So if you weren't gifted as a seamstress, right? Or if you didn't have what it takes to be a teacher, because let's face it, most of the time women weren't schooled, guess what? Your role in life, your career choice was hooker. That was it. And if you didn't do that, you would probably die alone, because you didn't have the means to take care of yourself. You couldn't build a farm. You couldn't build a house. You couldn't raise cattle. You couldn't plow a field. Like, it was just, you had no hope in hell if you weren't chosen. And how did they choose? How did they ensure they got chosen? By pleasing, by showing up in the best way they could, by presenting themselves as the best possible option, having the best dowry and whatever else they needed to pull together in order to be the one that was chosen. And I do believe that these patterns, these beliefs that, we live over, generation after generation, do actually get hardwired into our DNA and passed down. So I think, and I don't think I'm alone on this, for many of us, we are literally breaking patterns that are centuries old, and it can feel really, really, really fucking hard. No word of a lie. And there's actually, there is scientific evidence that trauma, beliefs, and past wounds do get passed down in they do get embedded and passed down in DNA, right? And there is medical evidence of this. I wish I could cite where I've seen this right now. I probably should have researched it before I started talking. But I know I have seen articles, and do your research. I always say, take what I say with a grain of salt. If what I'm saying sounds like bullshit, do your research. Please, I beg you, if you're going to do research online, and this is just an aside note, please make sure you're getting your information from credible sites, please, i.e. medical journals, psychology magazines. Please don't get it from some schmo sitting in his basement of his parents' house, putting his beliefs out there on the internet, please, I beg you. Kind of what I'm doing, but not in my parents' house. I'm in my apartment. But I am asking you to take everything that I say with a grain of salt. And I always say that, you are, in this day and age that we live in, we really do need to take control of what we read, what we see, what we believe. And I'm going off on another tangent now, but please, whatever I say, whatever I do, whatever anybody else says or does, do your own research, make your own conclusions, and make sure you are getting your information from credible sources. And that is a must. Okay, that is rant over. I will get off that soapbox now, and I will get back onto the other one, which was people pleasing. So, wow. How many places will we go today? So, coming out of these last couple of weeks, what I noticed in myself is, again, the lengths that I will go to people please, where it becomes literally detrimental to my own well-being. How great it feels when I do people please, and how awful it feels when I'm not. And how I literally have all the power in my hands to sabotage my entire life if I take action or make decision in that moment where I feel like I'm not pleasing anybody. It became so evident to me. And I think, and there was another point that I really wanted to make here, and it was literally just at the tip of my tongue. Oh, right. And that is how, going back and watching Back to the Beach, and how MTV was kind of orchestrating all this drama to paint a story or a picture or a narrative that they wanted to sell. Maybe life is happening the same way and for our benefit. Maybe on some level, all these things that were happening in the last few weeks. And if you felt this, let me know, hands up, let me know in the comments below or in response to the email or wherever you're seeing this podcast or hearing it, let me know. Did any of that happen for you? And is it possible? Is it possible? Because, it was such an energetically charged moment and season in time that it was your mind or your vibration literally manifesting situations to show you a narrative that you've been playing in the back of your mind again and again and again and again, which is this feeling, this narrative of not being enough, of feeling like you need to people please to survive, and actually seeing the worst outcomes of that behavior, the worst outcomes of your people pleasing, how awful it feels when you don't please, how quickly and easily you could sabotage your life by making the wrong decision when you feel like you're not pleasing. Maybe even, and hear me out on this, because I know I've said this before and I do believe this to be true, maybe even the people pleasing and the decisions that you're making as a result of the pleasing, is that sending you down a path that you might not have chosen if you weren't pleasing someone? Because, as a people pleaser, you do take the responses and the feedback from the world around you to tell you when you're doing good and when you're not. And so when you're going around and you're making these decisions and you're taking these actions and you're moving in these directions, is it false? And based on what you perceive to be good because what the world is telling you is good, instead of truly what is in your soul for what it is that you want to do, be, and create, right? And that is really the danger of putting your validation in anything outside of you, right? And I do believe that we all have a soul blueprint. I do believe that we all have a reason for being here, and I do believe and maybe breaking people pleasing toxic patterns is one of them. Hello, I'm here. But yeah, like I think if these last few weeks showed me anything, and I've been journaling a lot, and be prepared to get a lot more content on everything that we're talking about here today, because I really do feel the need to kind of break this down, share what I've learned and what's been working and what hasn't been working and what my big ahas moments were. And this is probably going to be a very short episode. Because again, I have no plan, no bullet points, no nothing. But I really do feel that there is something here that we can break down a lot further and learn to navigate a lot more efficiently, because in my other world, that's what I do. I am literally processes, data analysis, and strategy. So how do I bring those together? Well, maybe it's coming up with a strategy to really like break down and break away from these toxic people-pleasing patterns and making it feel like we can take it on one step at a time. If there's one thing I can honestly say, I've been working on this for quite some time, and I always think, okay, good, I'm done. I have mastered this. And then what ends up happening is another period, much like the last 2 weeks, will come and show me that I still got work to do. And you know what? That is okay. Because I do believe when there is something that is part of our mission in this lifetime, and I do believe that this is part of my mission, I do believe that we get to experience it and gain mastery over a certain intensity again and again and again, and we kind of move through that, and we feel like we're in a good place and we've kind of mastered it, and then boom, next layer shows up, and the next and the next and the next, and that's okay. But I have learned a lot about breaking the cycle. I continue to learn a lot, and I think that I'm at the point right now where maybe this gets to take up more space in the conversation, especially when it comes to this podcast, right? Because I do believe that, and I see it so much in the women around me, and I see it in many different ways, and I can almost like break it down to an archetype. But I can really see how so many of us fall into that pattern. And I can also see, how it's really holding us back from really and truly embodying our greatness. It's also supporting us in many ways. And I think that, this thing that we have in the personal development community about, people pleasing is bad and we, don't do that and do this instead. And it's just, this black or white way of thinking that we've got, I think in the personal development community is in itself toxic, because what it's asking you to do is reject a certain part of yourself and think of it as being bad and pretend it doesn't exist and pretend to be something else that you're not. And I do see that a lot, unfortunately, especially when you're working with people who, are not always trauma informed and don't know the side effects of dealing with either, CPTSD or PTSD and having survived traumatic experiences and the beliefs and the wounds that get created as a result of those things. So, take everything that you read again with a grain of salt. But there is something here that I think, we need to explore, that we need to break down. I think, like I said, making it all seem like a bad thing, I think is very toxic and the worst form of self-rejection. I think that, maybe we can extract some of the benefits and some of the gifts that, maybe being a people pleaser might bring into life. Because there are ups and there's pluses and minuses to everything. The important thing is to really come from a place of balance and knowing that, all your traits, and you learn this a lot, if you've ever had, what do they call that process? If you've ever had therapy sessions where, the therapist is working with internal family systems, right? It's really about embracing all your parts. Like, no more, this is a good part of me, this is a bad part of me. It's learning to work with and harmonize with all your parts. And people pleasing, is one of them. And so I think when we come at it from that perspective, and we can safely sit back and say, okay, and recognize it and witness it and know this part of who we are and how it interacts with the world and what triggers it and what makes it happy, what it really wants, what its motives are, and really trying to understand it and get to know it. Only then can we really truly gain mastery over it, and put ourselves, we never want to get rid of one of our parts, and that's something that I really want to stress here today. And I think, that's probably what led to the hot mess in the last couple of weeks, is because this people pleaser of part of me is basically trying to soothe the part of me that always kind of feels like she's not enough, and people pleasing has kind of been my mechanism to make me feel like I was enough and that, I would be okay and I would be safe and I would be supported and I would be loved and I would be accepted. And so when we start to work with and accept and harmonize all these parts and really listen to what it is that they need and what they're really working so hard for, because they are working really hard, and start to cultivate that for ourselves rather than relying on others to do that for us. And also learning how to balance the benefits that some of these parts give us, while also being mindful of where we get to say, take a different action or make a different decision than those patterns or beliefs might normally have us take, right? Because we are looking at them and seeing them from an empowered place. I think that's how we master. That's how we gain mastery over them. I don't think it's about getting rid of this part or that part or pretending that part doesn't exist, or just, doing our mindset work to say, hey, I'm enough and I'm just the best damn human in the world and nothing else matters kind of approach, where we're literally just whitewashing a lot of the fears and limiting beliefs that are working beneath the surface. So there is definitely something here about diving in deeper and learning to accept all these parts of you, learning to work with them instead of against them, learning to understand what it is that they're fighting for and working so hard for, so you can start to actually give them what they need, so maybe they don't have to work so hard. And also learning to take your power back over them and not allowing yourself to get caught up in the emotional reactivity that could sometimes come from these parts. Taking a step back, taking a pause, and really aligning with self as to the next action or decision that you're going to make, rather than letting the pattern, the fear, or the belief do the decision making for you. So there's definitely a lot more to unpack here, but I guess if I had to sum up this episode, I would say, if you'd been triggered in the last few weeks, how has the MTV of your mind been sending you a narrative of something that you need to unpack, something that you need to look at, a belief or a story that you've been telling yourself that's been on autopilot, sorry. What's the word that's been on repeat, right? Like, we have that song on your playlist that you put on repeat for like weeks at a time. You'd never tell anybody that you've been listening to the same song for like 3 weeks. I've done that many times. But it's like that, where it's like you've literally got this same belief that's on repeat and it's replaying constantly in your mind, right? And it's literally navigating and creating all the situations around you. Like, how can maybe Can you look at the last few weeks if they were very challenging for you? My heart goes out to you if they were. But how can you look at it and see what events were playing out? What fears or beliefs was it triggering in you? And how has this been a narrative that you now recognize and need to shift? But again, coming back from that place of, I recognize this is a part of me and I'm going to harmonize with it and work with it rather than trying to deny it. And I think that's probably the message I kind of wanted to drive home today. And maybe your theme was people pleasing too. Maybe your theme was not enoughness, or maybe it was a totally different theme. Let me know in the comments below. But I do feel like, what this period showed me is how, my emotions and my energy and how I feel is so dictated and dependent on whether or not I'm pleasing the people around me, and how it drives a lot of my decision making. And, how awful it feels when I feel like I've let people down or I fucked up in any way. Or if there's situations that I have no control over, it really brings me down to the worst, the lowest on my emotional scale. It is so intense how high and low my reactivity to these experiences can actually be. And again, it's recognizing that, it really isn't real. It is real to me because I feel it and it's real to my part. But I think, when it comes to what we experience internally and what we experience in our physical reality, we do need to separate. Because what we see and what is being reflected back to us isn't always real. What we feel on the inside is very real. And I think that when we start to step away from what we're seeing on the outside and look at what's coming up on the inside and just turn the cameras off for a little while and what's going on the outside, and take a moment to sit with what's going on the inside and start trying to run from it or escape into like Laguna Beach, like marathons. Although it was actually quite eye-opening. We can have quite an interesting experience and, moment of realization. So if the last few weeks have triggered, a hot mess of people pleasing, a hot mess of not enoughness, know that you are not alone. And even though events might have taken place that you may have perceived as proof that you suck, that you're not enough, and that you're not pleasing anybody, know that it was just being put in front of you to show you the intensity of your people-pleasing patterns or your not enoughness beliefs that are working beneath the surface. And rather than seeing it as confirmation that you suck, which I was doing for like the last 2 weeks, instead of seeing it that way, I want you to open to the possibility of seeing it as an invitation of, maybe this is just showing me where I was being really hard on myself and thinking that I wasn't good enough. And maybe this is just an invitation to say, hey, maybe you can start to look at this a little bit differently. And that is kind of the invitation that I have for you today. So I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know if this resonates in the comments below or wherever you're seeing this, or reply to an email at maria@thefemcoach.com. Let me know if you felt something similar in these last few weeks. Let me know what your takeaways were, what your lessons were. What did the triggers show you about where you are in your patterning and your personal development? Let me know if there's anything else that you're just dying to know about or wanting to ask. Who knows? You just might inspire the next episode of the Femme Cast. So that is all for now. Until next time, massive love. You've made it to the end of the episode, which could only mean one thing, and that is that you are truly committed to creating your best hot mess life. And for that, I am totally celebrating you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Tune in every single week for more hot mess inspo and tips, and make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. Your experience at the Femme Cast means the world to me, so leave an honest review. And don't forget to go to my website at thefemcoach.com to get free and instant access to the best hot mess life meditation and daily planner, so that you too can start living your best hot mess life today. Last but not least, don't forget to connect with me on the gram at the Femcast. That is all for now. Here's to living your best hot mess life. Until next time, massive love.